The Soulsborne Kiro Ring series has a very distinct identity. In the 12 years since Demon's Souls, From Software have made a formula so patented that it has its own genre tag on Steam. Even if you've never played one of these games before, you've seen the "you died" screen, you know what it's about. Light the bonfire, look at the pretty castle, fight the boss, drink the juice, and die. When a game mechanic actually changes in these games, it's kind of a big deal. Life gems in Dark Souls 2, Estus allocation in Dark Souls 3, even a minor change to a core mechanic can be a game changer when you're baking with a recipe this precise. But we're talking about From Software here. Do you know what happened between Dark Souls 2 and 3? They traded dark fantasy for Victorian Lovecraft and replaced shields with guns. And it worked. These absolute lunatics invented the wheel, then successfully reinvented it. Not just once, but twice. Do you have any idea how crazy that actually is? Remember when Ubisoft stopped making new versions of Assassin's Creed 2 and the franchise had a full-blown identity crisis for a few years? The team at FromSoft sat around the office after making Bloodborne, what many consider to be one of the best games of all time, and Dark Souls 3, the best game in the trilogy, and they said, you know what we should do next? We should make a samurai game with parkour and stealth mechanics. And it worked. But even knowing that history, even with the respect that FromSoft have earned over all these years, when I heard that Elden Ring was going to be an open world game with item crafting, I won't lie, I was a little skeptical. Not because I'm averse to open world games or anything, I just wasn't really sure if it would work. But lo and behold. Okay, let me just say that I'm not here to review this whole-ass entire game. I have a lot of thoughts and opinions that would make this video much longer and much less interesting, so I'm just gonna focus solely on what makes Elden Ring work. The way the Dark Souls formula has been fit to an open world, it's not just like a glove, it's like a season pass to Glove World. There are so many little pitfalls and traps that even the highest budget quadruple A developers fall into, because big open world games have to be very deliberate with how they use space and time. They have to justify the size of the world and the time that you put into navigating it, which only gets more difficult the larger and longer you go. That's why a lot of open world games make a very meticulous effort to guide you to stuff. They want you to go experience all the things, and to that end, UI elements like map markers and waypoints can be quite useful. But if you're constantly being directed on where to find all the things, what do you do in between those points in space and time? If the open world strictly becomes that place in between quests or that time trying to get collectibles, it doesn't really feel that open. This is what I like to call the Yankee Brim effect, where developers focus so intensely on filling the world to the brim that they lose sight of the Yankee, the freedom that allows open world games to be unique experiences. Make no mistake, Elden Ring has quite substantial brim, but it comes with a more than proportional amount of Yankee. The game tells you, become the Elden Lord. You open the door, and you go. Periodically there are signs that point you in the right direction, but there is absolutely nothing stopping you from being in the wrong place at the wrong time. Guidance in general is handed out on a very strict need-to-know basis. You need to know what direction to go to find the bad guys, but the only way to find out what's over there is to go see for yourself. Of course, being cryptic is far from a new approach for the Soulsborne games, but across this behemoth of a world, it feels like every corner is filled with mystery and confusion and wonder, even if there really is nothing there. And sometimes a rock really is just a rock. It makes me want to double check, not out of obligation, but out of genuine curiosity. That slow drip of information also goes for the game's mechanics. And while it's still a lot of stuff to take in for new players, I think they've done a much better job at pacing it here than in previous games. When you need to know something, usually you'll learn about it the moment that you need it, so you immediately put it into practice. The pop-up text messages may come off as intrusive, but compare that to dedicated sequences where you have to stop while the game walks you through how something works. Sometimes that is necessary, but Elden Ring's stripped-back approach generally fits because systems like crafting and inventory are designed to be intuitive enough to learn quickly. although some of the weapon-related stuff like Ashes of War and scaling could use better explanation. The only time the game really sets you aside to learn something is the one time it absolutely needs to stop you, and that's to learn combat. With a game this punishing, with this control scheme, combat is something you absolutely cannot mess up the tutorial for. If the player leaves the cave and they're not sure how to kill things, they will have a very, very bad time. Fortunately, the combat tutorial understands a pretty fundamental truth. You can teach the player how to fight, but they have to learn how to win. And if they die, they get a better grasp of the consequences of failure. I know that sounds kind of like a facetious joke, but understanding what dying entails is especially important for new players. Dying and going back to the grace at the beginning of the cave is a good way of experiencing that without any real stakes. The game essentially just puts you in a pen. Here are the controls, here's an enemy, connect the dots. That methodology extends to the other mechanics too. Here's what you can do, you decide what you should do. And because there are so many different ways to play the game, people will naturally come to different conclusions. Do you know what ability I put on my iron ball hands? You guessed it, a fucking lightning strike. I stick my hands into metal balls and raise them to the sky. Try squaring up to my Nikola Tesla game spheres. You'll be in for quite the surprise. So what does Elden Ring's openness mean for its difficulty? Is it truly the most accessible Soulsborne game to date? Okay, originally I wrote a joke here about how there's a few overpowered spells which make playing a mage like easy mode, but then they released a patch that balanced spells by buffing all of the spells that weren't overpowered? Is that the solution? But even if you go down the magic route, there will almost certainly be some point in your journey where you get your teeth kicked in. The game is biblically long. You're bound to hit a speed bump at some point. What sets Elden Ring apart from its predecessors is what you do when that happens. In the past, you'd grind souls at some spot to get more levels, but because now you can go basically wherever you want, grinding, quote-unquote, just means going somewhere else, exploring a new cave, fighting another boss. At the same time, going to a completely new area may get you into more trouble than you asked for, but at the same time, you'll get more souls if you can hang in there. I explored Caelid pretty early on in my first playthrough, and while I got absolutely destroyed in the process, I did find a few early golden seeds and tears for my flask. There's a risk-reward balance that a lot of open-world games kinda unintentionally stumble into when they arrange difficulty by areas of the map, and I think the feel of the Soulsborne combat system complements it perfectly. Instead of slamming into an enemy that's above your level like a brick wall, usually you have plenty of opportunities to feel them out. There are a lot of ways to assess how difficult an enemy is. How much health do they have? How much damage do they deal? What are their attack patterns like? And how or if you fight something is always up to you. So when you think to yourself, this is too tough, I probably shouldn't be here, that's a decision that you're making rather than one that's being made for you by the game. Obviously, if you go fight Margit the moment you leave the cave, you're gonna have a rough time, but you can do it. The game won't stop you from trying. It's really refreshing to have that kind of freedom, especially in a game that slaps you around so often. Oh, speaking of refreshing, do you know what the best part about the crafting system is? Watch this. That's it. That's the whole system. You don't have to go to a site of grace to do it, there's no animations involved, you just grab the things, make the stuff, and you're done. For reference, this all used to be a store. You used to have to go back to the hub area to buy things like arrows. The same also kind of goes for leveling, which you can now do at just any site of grace rather than the one at the hub world. That combined with open fast travel at almost any time really cuts down on the amount of menial travel that you have to do, so most of your travel time will actually be exploring and finding new things instead of going to the Dollar General to stock up on fabric softener. I've noticed that a few of these little convenience features, as well as things like spirit summoning, were also a part of the Cinders mod for Dark Souls 3. I don't know if FromSoft was necessarily taking notes, because most of the overlapping ideas aren't really that hard to come up with, but I just thought I'd shout out Cinders because it's a really, really good mod. I recommend it to anybody who's played Dark Souls 3. And if you haven't played Dark Souls 3, I'm going to kick your ass. No, get off. Oh no, I'm good.
Yeah? Did you miss a platform?
I thought I did, but I didn't.
I did. Hi.